My answers to you will be quite brief, but to the point. All right. Now, Monique has asked, does working through each layer from denial to real pain, so from there to there, increase my will to act lovingly from my soul? The answer is no. Isn't that interesting? It decreases your will to act unlovingly from your soul. Does that make sense? So, Monique, if you think about it, if you're removing the causes of pain from your soul, and the sin causing pain, and you're removing the pain, and you're removing your justifications for sin from your soul, which are all to do with your facade, then obviously you're removing your unloving self, but not yet creating your loving self. And that's why we've called the session Removing My Unloving Self. Because to create your loving self requires two things. Removing your unloving self and then engaging your real self to develop it to become loving. And we haven't covered the second part of it yet because that's the 2 days that follow this session. So the answer to your question is quite simply no, that particular part of the question. Working through each layer from denial to real pain does not increase my will to act lovingly from the soul, but it does decrease my will to act unlovingly, which is its purpose.
Could I just ask, does that mean that my will to act unlovingly is decreased at the denial stage, at the addiction stage? It's going to be decreasing it all the way down.
Yes. So once you're even just out of denial and starting to see your facade, automatically your will to act unlovingly is already decreasing. Does that make sense? So God sees these as positive actions you are taking to remove from yourself the parts of you that are unloving. And God will assist that process right from denial onwards. God will assist that process because that's the direction God wants you to take to do that. So yes, it's going to, but it's not going to improve your will to love. It's just going to improve your will to be unloving. In other words, you're going to have a decrease of your will to be unloving, while at the same time not yet necessarily increasing your will to be loving. So that's an act, that's another process, an engagement of another few things you're going to need to do there. Does that make sense? Yep. The second part of your question you've asked, when an action is necessary before my will is automatically loving, is there a way to choose actions before I've changed? Now, the first thing is there's a false premise in your question. It's not possible for you to be automatically loving. Do you understand? Being automatically loving is the result of you already taking loving steps to develop your loving self. So in other words, God will do some things for you, but you have to do some things for you. And we'll learn that in the next 2 sessions, or the next session that we have. What is it that God's already done for us? And what is it that I have to do in order to automatically become loving automatically? Now, once you've become loving and you're at one with God, then it's automatic, but not before then. Does that make sense? So that's the first thing. And then you've said, is there a way for me to choose a positive loving action before I've changed emotionally? The answer is no, there's not. And this is why it's so essential to forget about trying to be loving rather than taking a loving action of deconstructing your unloving self. Is that so many lovings that you've lost track? Let's make it clearer. A whole lot of unloving things had to happen in order for my unloving self to be created. my parents had to sin, society had to sin, and I had to sin. Right? And then as a result of those sins, I had to then be afraid of pain, and I had to develop terror and fear. And there's a whole lot of unloving things that had to happen to create my unloving self. Now, I can choose to act lovingly towards my unloving self by deconstructing it. So the way I love more is by actually deconstructing my unloving self, not by trying to be loving. Do you follow? The way you love is by firstly deconstructing the reasons why you're not loving. Right? In other words, taking action to destroy this. This being your creation, or human creation, not just yours, of course, because there's other people involved. This being our creation, we need to take steps to dismantle it. Right? In taking steps to dismantle it, we are being more loving. Does that make sense? But you're not going to be more loving by trying to be what you imagine love to be and then doing that, unless you've taken steps to destroy this. Because these are emotions coming out of your soul. And so even if you're acting with your willpower intellectually, there is still a whole heap of unloving emotions coming out of your soul. And while those unloving emotions are coming out of your soul, it's going to be very difficult for you to be loving from the soul. And even with your willpower, you think you're being loving, but there's still all these unloving emotions coming out of your soul. Do you follow? And while all these unloving emotions are coming out of my soul, am I really being loving? So the trouble with my willpower is it's just sort of fooling me into believing that I'm being loving when there's still all of this unloving crap coming out of my soul. And that's why the most loving thing you can do when you're, in a place of sin, the most loving thing you can do is to deconstruct your unloving self. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, your question is driven by your deep desire for your facade. You want to be more loving without having to address the reasons why you are unloving. And this is a big problem for humanity, wanting to be more loving while still holding on to all the unloving emotions. And it's just a fiction that we maintain in that place. Makes sense? Believing that we can become more loving while holding on to all these unloving emotions. It's the unloving emotions that determine our soul condition. And our soul condition will force us into action based on its condition. So unless we change its condition, we're not going to be really changing our state of love, no matter how we act. So the key is to change your condition and focus on the change of condition rather than focusing on being loving. So when you notice an unloving behaviour, the best course of action is to find out the reasons why you engaged that unloving behaviour. So let's say you're unloving. The best thing to do is to find the reason why you were unloving. And if you do that, you're more loving. Does that make sense? But if you ignore the reason why you were unloving and just try to be loving, that reason still remains within you, creating more sin.
That was actually obviously that was my question.
Yeah.
That was the result of, I tried to be loving.
Yeah. No, you tried to be what you imagined love to be.
I was trying to think of what you guys would do.
Yeah, but you have no idea what we'd do at this point.
No.
So you're only doing what you imagine love to be, yes. Which we already said is already a problem, because what you imagine love to be and what love really is are completely different things.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
That's right.
So that's a big problem. When you try to do what you imagine love to be, you are actually frequently sinning.
Yes.
Because what you imagine love to be is different to what God knows love is. Right? Yeah. So that's a problem. When you try to be what you imagine love to be, you're only sort of engaging oftentimes more sin.
Exactly.
Yep. Remember right at the beginning of this whole series of discussions that we've had this week, I said to you that sometimes the most difficult thing to address emotionally is where you believe you have been loving. And somebody's trying to tell you that you're not, but you believe you are. That's really hard. And that's what you've been doing a lot, engaging what you think love would do, with using your willpower without removing from your soul what you actually do. Does that make sense? Now, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and the most loving thing you can do for other people is to remove your unloving self. At least then you're neutral to love, not always being unloving, you're neutral to it. It doesn't mean yet that you've developed your will to love, but it does mean you've developed your will to remove a lack of love.
Yeah. Could I ask anything more on that? Yeah. In that situation, it was imperative that it was necessary that I acted in that I needed to take an action.
Yep.
And you're right that I tried to do something, and I guess I was fooling myself into where I thought what I actually wanted to do was I thought I wanted to feel through my law of attraction, or what?
Whose law of attraction?
God's law. What it was
your
bringing
soul
me.
is attracting. Yeah.
Yeah. To show me. But then I had negative laws of attraction coming that
There's
showed
no such thing as a negative law of attraction.
painful laws of attraction.
There's no such thing as a painful law of attraction. All of God's laws are loving. None of those cause pain.
It just showed me that I wasn't actually loving.
Can you see even in the question you're asking, there's so many errors I'm having to correct. And this is the problem, you see, is you imagine you know. And in the process of imagining you know, you're not then open of what you don't know. You see what I'm saying? When you believe, remember we talked about that in the first group feedback. Imagining you know things that you don't actually know causes a big problem for you. And you're doing that quite frequently. Even with the law of attraction, the language you use about the law shows you don't know the law very well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep. And we'll talk more about that law, and it's not going to be much that we talk about because there's so many other things to talk about with regard to law as well. But the reality is all of God's laws are loving. There are only good consequences from every attraction. That's why, and even what you believe is a bad consequence, like an accident, is actually a good consequence from God's perspective because it makes you aware of something being wrong, right? None of God's laws have negative consequences in the sense that they only have negative consequences in our opinion. It's a bit different, right? And our opinion is when I break a law and there's a reaction, then I think that's a negative consequence. But the reality is from God's perspective, he wants that to happen because that's a positive consequence, informing you that there was a problem that's threatening your very existence. You see, you remember I said yesterday that all of God's laws, all of them, support your very existence. So the law of attraction is there to support your existence. Without it, you would not exist. You could not exist, in fact, without the law of attraction. Most people don't realise that. Without the law of cause and effect, without the law of attraction, without the law of gravity, you would not exist. Now, there's a whole series of laws that are there to help you exist. Law of attraction is one of them. If the law of attraction wasn't working in your body, your whole body would just fly apart. You'd be dead in an instant.
Okay.
So it's a great thing. You got the law, right? Keeps you together. Keeps everything functioning and working. All right? It makes the amalgamation of your body and the way it works. Right? Even just that one law. So without the law, your very existence is threatened. So there's no such thing as a negative law of attraction or a negative law of repentance or a negative consequence from any law. There's consequences based upon breaking the law. So the negative consequence comes from breaking it, not from living in harmony with it.
Yeah.
Do you understand?
Yeah. And I guess maybe I saw it as negative because I was deluding myself that I was actually taking positive action.
Correct.
And that's my issue.
Correct.
I'm off the board. Like I'm not even I'm not even seeing most of the time that I'm in denial. Like you should.
Yeah, you're calling something a negative law of attraction. And I'm saying, no, you only get a negative event from the law of attraction if you break the law, not if you're in harmony with it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you break the law, certainly there will be a penalty of some kind. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Just like if you break the law of gravity, there will be a penalty of some kind. It's no different.
So that's a good thing to then show, well, actually I was in denial about my motivations.
Yeah.
And then what you said, just look at what's my reason.
Remember, I also said yesterday, God's law, it wasn't yesterday, it was probably 2 days ago now, 3 days ago. But I said God's laws all look at your attitude, your attitudes, your emotions to things. Human law doesn't do that. Human law just is arbitrary. God's laws are all looking at the different emotions that you feel and trying to correct them and bring them into harmony with love. So every action of the law of attraction is to try to assist you to become more loving, right? That's its role. And not to just be more loving in terms of your action, but to actually become more loving in terms of the being, in terms of how you are internally. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And many of you believe that all you have to do is act a certain way externally and everything's better. And in fact, your question suggests that. And what I'm suggesting to you is that no, to actually become more loving, we're going to have to be more loving. That's the only way. It's not an action that you take, although there will need to be actions taken in order to release the unloving behaviour and get more loving. But it's not the actions that matter, it's the being, the condition. So don't believe that willpowering yourself through things is going to change your condition, because it doesn't. And you want your condition to change. You follow? It's the condition that needs to change here. And all of God's laws that are helping you on the way are all about changing your condition, which is actually about changing your character and your attitudes with regard to love, in comparison to love, from God's perspective. Not about changing your mind and doing something different, because that doesn't change your condition. And therefore, the condition of love inside of you does not change. So we've got to give up this concept that I can act differently and be more loving. You are either not loving or more loving based on what you are in your state, not on what you act. Although actions can cause even further degradation or further improvement. The reality is the condition of your soul has to be changed in order for your condition of love to change.
Yeah.
And willpower is not going to accomplish that. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah.
Could I ask a clarifier?
Sure, you can.
On something?
Yep.
Just on, say, with superiority, we know that that's an issue. But
can I just make a comment about superiority just generally first before you ask a question?
Sure.
What I've noticed for yourself, Mon, is you're always trying to feel like you get it before you've gotten it.
Yeah.
I notice a number of others, like Ange, you do that too, you know that. You try to believe you're getting it before you've gotten it. And you're far better off knowing that you haven't got it and then working from there than you are believing that you've got something and working from there. Now, the belief that you've got something is already a feeling of superiority, particularly when
I haven't got
you haven't got it. Does that make sense? Yep, but go on.
Is that what you're saying right now? I have a feeling of superiority that I've got it because I feel really confused even about how to... I feel really confused about even how to start in denial about my superior. Like I started to see...
this is a better place than you have been. What I'm talking about in the past, the last few years, and what I've observed since I've known you, which is how long have we known each other now?
6 years now.
6 years. In that time, I've observed you act in superiority frequently, believing that you know things that you don't yet know. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And even the language you use, other people listening to you think you know it. And the fact that you seem to process things emotionally Other people look at that and go, she's processing emotions, she must get it. But I know you don't.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So that's an issue, and that's all about what you're doing in your facade here, right?
Yeah.
So that's one issue. But now let's answer your question about what you were going to ask about the superiority.
Well, that I can't even understand. Sorry, but I can't. I know you've explained it to Pete and a few others, but I can't even understand like how you even move from denial techniques in my. Sorry, but I know you're a good teacher, but like how do you move from? I see my superior. I justify. I blame.
Yeah.
Like every box I've ticked. I minimise. I deny.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm at. I see it all, but I don't even know what to do with I don't know what to do with that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I get you. Have firstly some compassion for yourself. At the moment you're not. So just let yourself have some compassion for what you've noticed. Does that make sense? You don't have to be harsh on yourself here about it all. And this is the trouble, is that part of your superiority complex, if I can call it that, is actually driven by the feeling that you have to compete in order to feel valid. Do you follow me? That's what you're having to do. And the problem with that is that you're just harming yourself more, but also you're not in competition here with anyone, and I said to the first with anyone but yourself. Do you follow me? It's about you becoming a better you. It's not about you competing with Joe Blow and about becoming a better, who's better. But you think it is at this stage. It's about who's better. And that tells me that in your childhood there was issues set up in your childhood where you were forced to compete in order to get loved or approval from somebody, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So what I'm suggesting to you is, right, that's an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're out of denial because you know it's an addiction. So you're trying to tell me that you're not out of denial, but I'm saying, no, you're out of denial because you know that addiction exists in you. See, that person who's in denial doesn't even know it's there. You follow? So you're out of denial. You've made progress in getting out of denial about that issue. You just haven't made a progress with the addiction itself. Does that make sense? Because you've been living in the addiction a lot.
Correct.
Competing, so-called processing emotion like you think you're doing, competing with other people, hoping to prove that you're better.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
So there's your addiction.
Yep.
Right? So what you do is you need to feel that addiction. Remember we talked about this in 2014 group about feeling the addiction, seeing that it's a sin.
Yep.
And then allowing yourself to see why that addiction's in place. And that's got to come from some kind of justification of it. Why is there a need to compete in order to prove yourself? So that's where I'd spend my time if I was you. Why do you need to compete in order to prove yourself?
Right.
And that's a lot to do, isn't it, with how you were treated when you were children? Both you and Renee?
Renee, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And who set up the competition?
My dad.
Exactly. So then you get a teacher who's teaching divine truth, and what do you want to do?
I've been dreaming about coming here, proving to Dad that I've processed all this emotion, and then Dad tells me day one
that I haven't
changed, and that sent me into a meltdown for the last 3 days.
Exactly.
I just wanted to get the love. I just want to get your love or someone's love and just be like.
Yeah, but see, my love is there for you already without you needing to do it. That's why I've spent time answering your questions and whatever else, is because I love you anyway. You don't have to do that for me. And you don't have to do it for God either. God loves you already. A lot of this is what you're doing. You need to do for you, so you can be happy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yep. So my feelings are, this is a big addiction you've had in play now for 6 years or so. We've talked to you about it before, but you didn't want to believe it.
No.
Does that make sense? And now it's great, because at least now you can feel it's there.
I can.
And you can believe that what I'm saying to you for 6 years has been the case. You've been in competition, you just want my approval.
I do.
Right? And I don't want to give you my approval while you're in the addiction of needing it. You follow me?
And you even act lovingly to actually expose that on day one, which then I really felt helped a lot to see that that's...
But it's a huge addiction for you.
Yep.
And as a result of it being a huge addiction, you're going to have pain about it being stopped. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
Yep. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just ask, awakening to the sin, is that just feeling that superiority is just unloving? Is that awakening?
Well, that's not remember, the awakening process firstly begins with accepting your facade. So accepting that you do this. Yeah, you haven't really accepted you do this at this point. You do it without accepting you've done it. You follow me?
Yeah.
So you need to firstly accept that, yes, this desire for daddy's approval and competing with other people to get it is a strong desire in you. Yeah. Right? So that's number one. And you need to get to the point where you have compassion for yourself about that. And you don't have compassion for yourself about that at this stage. You follow? Yeah. You just feel like quite hard on yourself about it. Yeah. So that's no good. Then the second step is the deconstruction process. So in the case of awakening to this particular sin, you'd have to deconstruct the desire to do it, the justifications that cause you to do it. Does that make sense? So what causes you to justify competition and not see it as an unloving act? So what causes you to do that? Well, that will require some self-analysis. Does that make sense? Yeah. Allow yourself to look. Allow yourself to do... Remember what the process we did with Laura about judgment earlier? Yeah. Do the same process for yourself about this issue of the desire for superiority in order to prove yourself to daddy. Yeah. So you write down similar issues. You can write down what you believe you're going to get, how you believe you're going to get it, what you've been doing. And this will help you identify the underlying emotions that drive your justification. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's the same process as the process I went through with Laura, but just on a different subject.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yep. Good question, huh? Yeah. You learn a lot through those kind of questions sometimes. All right, then we come to David. Down in front here, if David could have